I'm happy now to introduce Mr. Emmanuel Atamba Oriedo, who will be our fifth speaker, who will be telling as much about the pesticide, the locust, and all those things. So, Mr. Emmanuel, karibu sana, and let's hear from you, from your end. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. I think I just prepared to talk about pesticide, the work we have done on pesticides. So I work with the Root to Food Initiative as a research and policy analyst, and the Root to Food Initiative is a program under the Henrik Paul Foundation, which is a German foundation working in Kenya on a lot of other issues beyond food rights work. Of course, I also do a bit of other things and engage in other things, and I'm also a farmer and I'm a proud gardener. I also have my own kitchen garden, and I've set up several kitchen gardens in Nairobi. Yeah, so on the issue of pesticides, which I think is an example of conversations that are happening in this country when it comes to our food systems. This is a conversation we picked up in 2019. So Root to Food works towards the realization of the right to adequate food. As an initiative, we are four of us. My colleague Evelyn is also part of this meeting. And we also have an alliance of now about 1,000 Kenyans who are concerned about the issues of food insecurity, the politics of hunger, and the fact that we are not addressing this problem. And so talking about food rights, of course, doesn't just end there, because you also now have to talk about some of these issues that tend to intertwine or affect food rights, as it were. And so one of the conversations that we have picked up, we discussed a lot about budget, and I think we have interacted a lot on different platforms with most of the participants here who have already spoken. We discuss about budget and a lot of these other things. So we do engagement in agriculture policies. We give comments, we give views, really in how we think, we need to address our problems. So the conversation on pesticides, which is an example of what we have, the work we have done, I think just as a basis that can be used, because I think most of these meetings, when we discuss, we say we need to address this, we need to tackle this, we need to do this. I think just an example of what can be done and what can be achieved. I think when we picked up the conversation on pesticides, it's not like people were not talking about it, but it wasn't just like on top of people's minds. We did analysis and looked at the pesticides that are registered in this country, the active ingredients registered in this country, and we found that more than 33% of the active ingredients registered here in Kenya for use here in Kenya as pesticides are not approved in the European market. So that was the starting point. It was shocking that while almost another like 30 to 35% of our products are actually coming from Europe, of the pesticides are coming from Europe, 34% of the products we're using here have not been approved there for use. So some have been there for use, they have been removed, some have been banned for use in the market. And we thought this is a discussion we need to have. And we did a lot of research around that. We looked at how the pesticides market is growing, and one of the reports that we found from AAK, which is the Association for Agrochemicals, Agrochemicals Association in Kenya, was that in the year 2018 they had reported that in the last 4 years, the preceding 4 years before 2018, that there was an increase from 6,400 tons of pesticides imported into this country to 15,600 tons of pesticides. So the conversation that we started then, in as much as people, it becomes a contentious issue because the question is, okay, so we need pesticides for food security and all that. But I think sometimes that is just what we want to know, and I think we have reduced these conversations about food systems and about our food to be very simple conversations that we ignore a lot of the issues that come with it. Yes, we can argue that pesticides are essential in food production. For example, when you're talking about dealing with locusts and all that, but there is always an element of what is safer, yeah? What is less harmful, what is less toxic? And that is the conversation that we got into. So most of the products that we were talking about, the active ingredients, we were not talking about banning all the products. We were talking about the 33% that have been withdrawn in the market in Europe, either because they are carcinogenic, either because they are neurotoxic, either because they're endocrine disrupting, or they have some sort of reproduction toxicity or neurotoxicity. So those were the active ingredients that we were talking about. And we really raised the issue, of course, communicating to the public. And I think Kenyans were open to this conversation, and people started talking about it. And there was a petition in Parliament. There was a lot of debate about it. Of course, we know that these products also represent a lot of livelihoods, also represent a lot of business interests. But at the end of the day, we always need to come back and ask ourselves, what are we doing to the same system that feeds us? Because I don't believe that we produce our own food. The world feeds us. Food comes from nature. You put a seed in the soil and it grows into maize. You can't say because you put the seed in the soil, you did most of the work. Most of the work is done actually by nature. Most of the fruits that we are eating, we don't even know how the pollination is done. No one goes to and observe how bees are pollinating the mangoes, for example. So nature does most of the work. And therefore, all the discussions that we have and all the practices that we do, in the event that we are affecting the same system that feeds us, then we are really it's almost like cutting your own legs and expecting to walk. So I think that conversation really exposed a lot of the issues that were not really in discussion. But I think to sum it up is that there's really a lot of conversations that need to happen. There's really a lot of research that needs to happen. And when people do research, when researchers do their own research, sometimes you can come up with findings that you're not willing to share because they become very controversial and become very political. But I think at the end of the day, we need to be able to tell ourselves the truth. To ask ourselves why a pastoralist is hungrier than people who are dealing with crop production, for example. Why is drought affecting us year in, year out? Why are we not putting in resources to do that? Ask ourselves whether the pesticides that we are using, if they are killing bees, whether it's worth it. Yeah, is it worth it to use pesticides in the market that kill bees? Ask ourselves whether our farmers can actually use protective gear, because those are the justifications that we're getting from companies that are selling pesticides. That these products are bad, but yes, the farmers can use protective gear so they're not getting into contact with that. But we know in our context that farmers don't use protective gear. So those simple things that we need to agree around, and then we can be able to shape our food system the way, be it on all the other aspects of food safety, all the other aspects of access and availability, all the other aspects of affordability. If we can ask ourselves the right questions and be ready to face the conversation, because that is where I find people being very sneaky about it, because it's almost like, okay, we will sort this out, okay, we will deal with this. But I think the real problems that are affecting our food system require urgent attention. And of course, now we have the process to evaluate some of the products going on by PCPP, which is a big step, because now we are starting to look at the products we have in the market and see, okay, so is this one good, or is this one, should this one be removed? Are there alternatives for this one? It's a good conversation to start from there. Our intention was not to ban all the pesticides, but of course to just have that conversation where we can reflect. And I think if we multiply this kind of approach across the different conversations on food systems, I think that will really work. There are a lot of, now we're all talking about food systems, we have forgotten about agricultural value chains. But even when we talk about food systems, let us ask ourselves, what are we talking about? What are the specific issues? Let us not copy and paste. Yeah, how we have dealt with COVID, for example, has really affected the ability of people to feed themselves. Yeah, and we still have these things and we are not talking about them. For example, we now have matatus carrying full capacity, yet we cannot allow our small traders to operate even up to midnight, for example. And that might mean a lot of livelihoods lost. That might mean a lot of revenue lost. But no one is asking those questions. I think the most important thing is to just be asked and ask ourselves, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing what is favorable for everyone? Or are we copying and pasting in terms of agricultural policies, in terms of economic policies, in terms of even our own, our own laws and our own policy documents? Let us be very clear that, this is what works in our context, and this is what works for our people, and these are the challenges we have, and these are the solutions that can come. And at the end of the day, necessity is the mother of invention. And when we can say this is poison, we are not dealing with poison, we will of course find alternatives. And those alternatives might even be developed by our own people. There is nothing that farmers are getting from pesticide companies. So let us stop saying that when we ban pesticides, farmers are affected. that is just, to derail us from thinking that we cannot take action on things that are actually supposed to be acted upon, because we tend to hide into some realities that, this will happen if we do this, this will happen if we do this, this will happen. But at the end of the day, we need to make decisions about our food systems, the future of our food, and how we want to